So it's kind of funny this is Dr. Kelly again. And I kind of want to talk to you guys about stuff I've been doing lately. A little different than what I normally do. So I'm not playing with chemicals and things like that. I'm mostly looking at the sky, looking at stars, looking at the moon, looking at planets, all sorts of stuff in the night sky. It's a lot of fun. And I'm going to show you some of that stuff, and I think you can do some of it too. So you're probably asking yourself, why did I starting this video in the middle of the day? It's still sunny out. Well, it's actually not the middle of the day. It's getting toward the end. It is winter. It is quite cold right now, but that's sometimes the best time to see things at night because night is earlier during the winter. So to start off with, one of the reasons I'm starting this during the day is to show you sometimes you can do a little stargazing, really not stargazing, but moon gazing during the day. And so let's just start with that. Now I have the screen turned around, and what do we see in the sky? That is the moon. You can see it during the day sometimes. Doesn't always happen. Maybe about once a month. So I'm gonna try and there, it came in focus, so you can barely see it. So you can see it better during the night, but even during the day, you can see the moon. One of the things I did want to mention about this, though, is that if you do go out at night, please dress warmly. I am wearing a hat. That'll help keep me warm. I am wearing a sweater. I am wearing a thick winter coat, and I will be having gloves on. Now, you don't always have to dress that warmly, but tonight is particularly cold. It's going to be like 20 or 15 degrees, so that's really cold. And dress warmly if you're going to be outside for any length of time. If it's a little warmer, maybe you can forego the gloves, but a hat and a coat are still something good to have. Right here, I have a little setup with a smartphone here, and I am going to put it in this coffee cup here. And the reason for putting it in the coffee cup is because at night things are very dark and it's hard to get enough light for the camera to work well. So sometimes you have to put it in something really stable so it can take the picture over a longer period of time than just holding the camera. But I'm going to see how that's going to work. So here we are in the night sky. I'm going to try and show you some things that are hard to see on video, but let's see. Oh, actually, we do see a little bit of the constellation Orion. This is a picture of the same scene I just showed you on video. It shows you some of the stars, a little more detail. But this was, by the way, this was taken with my phone, not a telescope. So it gives you some really good pictures. And what you see in the night sky very clearly is the constellation Orion. And in this picture, what I've shown you is that the lines that are drawn, kind of like connect the dots, are between the different stars. You see the stuff outlined in red is the constellation you normally see pretty easily. You can see the 3 stars in the middle are the belt, and the top 3 stars, you know, the triangle that's formed, is the head of Orion. Then the bottom are the feet, and the one on the goes down the middle is his sword. The stars that are connected with the yellow lines are harder to see at night. I've usually not seen them with the naked eye, especially in areas like we live here. But you can usually see the stars connected with the red dots. That's the constellation Orion. So this is again a picture of the star with the constellation Orion. A little closer now, you can see the stars better. What I'm going to show you here is that sometimes with binoculars or even a telescope, you can take a look at some of the regions of the constellation. We're kind of focusing in now toward the sword, which are the three or four stars in a row that go down, and they're tiny. You see a kind of fuzziness around the central star. That is known as the Orion Nebula. And sometimes you can take close-up pictures of those. This requires kind of a binoculars or a telescope, and you can get even better pictures. And this is one of those. That's the central star in the middle with all that colorful white wispy stuff is known as a nebula. It's a nebula surrounding that star. Here we are back to a bigger picture of the whole constellation of Orion. Now we're going to look at the three stars that form the belt of Orion, and mostly we're going to look at the bottom star, or the stuff around the bottom star. Just like we saw in the last picture, it also has a nebula. It's called something a little different, and it looks a little different. What you see there at this bottom star in the belt of Orion, now that star in the center is called Alnitak. And the two nebula that are around it, there's one to the left, which is known as the Flame Nebula, very bright yellow. The nebula to the right, kind of wispy and slightly reddish, is known as the Horsehead Nebula. And actually the little dark space partway down is actually the nebula itself. It's dark. It doesn't let any light pass through, and so that's why it appears dark. That's what you can see with a telescope or binoculars.
And look at other things that are in the night sky, like the moon.
And this is another telescope look at the moon, so it looks very close, and you can see lots of things, lots of craters, lots of what they call seas. They're not really seas, they just happen to be flat areas on the moon, because the moon doesn't have really any seas of water or anything else. It's pretty dry. There may be a little bit of water there, but very, very little, and it's all caught up in ice or something maybe. But there are different things to view on the moon at different times. Sometimes there are eclipses of the sun, and then there are eclipses of the moon itself. This is a picture, again with a telescope, of the moon during eclipse of the moon. It's called a lunar eclipse, and that is when the shadow of the moon, or shadow of the earth passes in front of the moon. That's kind of the reddish area. It's red in the light area. The sun is still hitting the moon. The earth is not blocking the light to that part of the moon. That's why it's still kind of bright white. But the dark reddish part is the part where the earth's shadow hits the moon, and it looks very dark and deep. With telescopes, you can also look at some of the planets. And as I mentioned earlier, there are planets that are very bright in the night sky. Jupiter is one of them. And this is Jupiter through a telescope. Those two little dots near there, those are the moons, some of the moons of Jupiter that you can see with a telescope. And then you have two more show up later on. But that's another fun thing that you get to see in the night sky. You don't need a telescope to really look at the night sky. You also can go to some very dark places, sometimes in the Poconos, which is where this picture was taken, or a desert or someplace far away from a city. That's the best place to see really dark skies with lots of stars. This, as I mentioned earlier, was taken in the Poconos, and you can see lots of stars. This is just one relatively easy image. It's what you would really see in person, and you see kind of a faint diagonal across the picture. That's the Milky Way. Now, if you look at it more specially, you take a picture of some special way, and actually this is many pictures taken together, you can see things in a lot more detail. You see all the stars grouped, along the diagonal there, and some dark areas. That's the Milky Way, and that little smudge on the lower right-hand side is the galaxy Andromeda. This is all stuff, and it's normally what you could see, but the photo makes it easier to see. While it is good if it is perfectly dark, which is usually over an hour after sunset, you can still see some stars even if it's not quite that much time. This picture, I was at Lake Nakamixon in Bucks County, and what you see in the lower right, that big bright object, which kind of almost looks like the sun. It's not the sun, it's Venus. And in this photo, I've made it brighter so that you can also see all the other stars that are out there. But Lake Nakamixon is a good place to see stars. It's relatively dark there. Another dark place to go nearby is French Creek State Park. It has, you can see some of the night sky. You still see some of the glow of the city lights nearby. That's on the horizon. That's what that bright kind of yellowish, whitish glow is. That's city lights. But you can make out a lot of stars. And if you look with a camera that takes multiple pictures, you can see a lot more stars, and it is absolutely beautiful out. You can see all the stars. There's a group of stars kind of over on the far right that is just barely above the light pollution area. Those are known as the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters. Another thing that's you can see in the night sky. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you find gazing into the sky and looking for stars as much fun as I do.